What's up guys, Jeff Cavalier, AthleteNext.com. Today I'm going to show you 5 ways to start building up those bicep peaks of yours, to get them to stand at attention. And we're using 2 muscle markers to get the job done. So without further ado, let me start drawing all over this damn arm to make it that much easier for you to understand. Okay, so as you can guess, the bicep is a 2-headed muscle with each head having a different attachment up here in the shoulder, which allows us to hit it a little bit differently and influence it a little bit differently depending upon the exercises we choose and the way we do the exercises. That being said, you have to see which one is which. So right here we have a short head and a long head. Now the short head is going to be the one that is closer to the inside of our body, closer to our chest, and the long head is going to be on the outside. But we can actually get more specific than that with the markers. So you can see that right here, you can almost see a slight shading right along that line right there. Okay, but more importantly, you can see that as the bicep comes around the corner, it kind of comes up and then it starts to go off in that direction. Right? That little turn, that indicates the bottom of the short head. So if we go and we take our marker, we can come around this way, up under here, and of course it's going to go into our shoulder, which we'll take a look at in a second. And then right where it makes that sort of turn, right up in through here, it comes down, and then it comes back down through here. So we've got the short head of the bicep looking like that. Now, what leaves the long head? Well, the rest of it. So if we take out our other marker here, we've got the long head coming up and around this way and back, and then diving down that way. Okay, so now the important point to make here is that the long head is actually the one responsible for the peak. The peak is happening right up here on top of the bicep, and the long head is the one responsible for that peak. The medial head here, or the short head, is again the one responsible more for bicep width. You can see that when you look at my arm from here, it's what is responsible for the width of the bicep. Doesn't mean that we don't want to train both areas, but if we're talking about bicep peaks here, this is how we're going to go get it. So taking a quick look beneath the surface here and putting the science back in strength as we like to do, you'll see that the long head bicep tendon actually crosses on the further outside portion of the arm, and it attaches to the top of what we call the glenoid or the ball and socket joint. Okay, right in here, right in through the heart of the joint though. Whereas the short head of the bicep, more on the inside portion of the arm and attaching to what they call the coracoid process, which is right there. But you can see really quickly, and something I'll elaborate more on in a future video, the short head of the biceps never really gets in trouble or causes much pain because it's further out of the joint, away from all the action, whereas the long head runs right up this groove and it sort of frays itself over and back, up and down as you raise your arm. This can tend to get inflamed and oftentimes be misdiagnosed with something, say, like a rotator cuff tear. But we can kind of go over that more in the future. The point being is the locations here do have different impacts on the exercises that you do. Which leads us perfectly into our first point, and that is if you want to target the long head more, then you want to make sure that your grip is narrow and that your elbows are close to your body. So if you look at something like this, you're going to see that the area that you can actually see is the area you're actually working. It's the way that it works here for the biceps. When we take our grip wide and we take our elbows away from our body, the more area we can see here is going to be the inside, short head, that's going to get more of the attention. So if you're going to try to build bigger bicep peaks, if you're doing an exercise like a curl, watch as I grab here, a narrow grip. You can feel that right away. If you do a cross body curl, this way here, you can see that you're really focusing on that elbow tight, that narrow positioning, and you can again feel it immediately here in the outer head or the long head of the bicep. The next point actually relates to a mistake that a lot of us make when we're doing our bicep training, and it has a direct impact on the strength of contraction, ultimately the bicep peaks that you can get from your bicep training. And that is, you never want to have your wrist participating too much in the bicep curl. Because the more your wrist participates, the more your forearm is, and the less your bicep is. So one of the best ways you can actually help to build your peak is to keep your wrist bent backwards throughout the exercise. We like to call it like a waiter's tray position. Watch, I'm doing a basic barbell curl again. Now the common way to do this is as we get fatigued, we try to curl too much with our forearm, trying to get some extra help, but that is in fact taking some of the good work away from the biceps. What we want to do is eliminate that. Get the forearms out of this. It's not their job at the moment. Keep them in this sort of backwards waiter position, and you should immediately feel a much stronger contraction at peak contraction on the curl. This is something that can apply to any single bicep exercise you do. Even this bicep chin curl that I'm doing, you can notice that I'm keeping my wrist in this slightly extended position throughout, just to make sure that the focus is never on the forearms but all on the biceps. The third thing you want to do is make sure that you're fully supinating your wrist at the top of every bicep exercise. Providing that your mobility in your wrist allows you to, then you want to make sure you take advantage of that, because you're not only going to get a stronger contraction, but you're going to allow the long head to actually do the work for you. It's a better supinator of the wrist because of its alignment and positioning than, say, the short head. So what you can do is make sure that no matter what exercise you're doing, you're really, really squeezing and supinating at the top. You can see that as I do that. If I just do a contraction to here, that's how much I get. If I go a little bit more and supinate a little bit more, you can see that the peak stands up even more. Again, you do it here, this is a contraction. I continue, I continue, I continue, I continue. You can literally see it raise up further and further. So you want to make sure that, again, if your wrist mobility allows you to, don't ever shy away from that really, really strong contraction at the top by ensuring that you're fully supinated at the top. So on the fourth point here, we actually have to look back to that anatomy again. If you remember, that long head tendon actually crossed the shoulder joint. It ran over the shoulder joint, which means it has an action and an involvement with the shoulder that the short head does not. So if we want to actually preferentially hit the long head of the bicep, we want to find exercises that will involve the shoulder and place it into a bit more stretch position so that we can get a stronger contraction from the long head. We can do that by placing our shoulder here into extension back behind our body. You can automatically see again the tension that starts to happen here in the long head. So we can do this with, as you would probably imagine, you can see here an incline curl. Obviously, this setup of this exercise positions us perfectly for our arm to be back behind our body, but maybe not so obvious, something like a drag curl. Drag curls are great for hitting the long head. They're great for allowing us to reach that peak contraction. They're great for allowing us to keep the wrists in that bent back position. And again, you can see that with our arms positioned behind our body, it hits this in a perfect way based on the anatomy that we just discussed. Alternatively, if you wanted to hit the short head again, if you were trying to work on the beefiness here of the bicep, then you'd want to do the opposite. You'd want to place your arm into a position where your elbows are out more in front of your body to sort of minimize the long head. And you could do that obviously with preacher curls. You could do it obviously with spider curls, so that you have options for there too. But if we're talking about bicep peak, then you want to stick to the long head adjustments that I've already covered. And finally, tip number 5 is one you've probably actually heard many times before, and I can tell you it's actually not bro science. People will tell you if you want to get your biceps to stand up taller, then you want to work your brachialis, because your brachialis, when built and developed, will actually push up on your bicep and make it more prominent. Yeah, it's actually true. And I'm actually going to break out a little bonus marker action here to show you why that is. You can see that right above the tricep. If this is the tricep right here, above the tricep, we have this space right in through here, which represents the brachialis. Okay, so inside here, again, pushing up from the lateral side, you can see that when this muscle is developed, we're going to actually push up on the long head a little bit more because it lays underneath that muscle. Obviously, I'm showing it here on the outside, but it lays underneath. So how do we hit that? We hit that when our hands and our wrists are in a neutral position. So anytime we're doing exercises like hammer curls here, you can see that that would cause your brachialis to be doing most of the work. It's primarily a bicep or an elbow flexor. It is not a supinator. So again, keeping it in neutral position is the perfect way to target this muscle. All right, so there you have it, guys. As you can see, arm training is not all about just picking things up and putting them down. There's actually a little bit of a science behind how you're supposed to do it, especially if you want to get more from it. And I understand the science, guys. I've actually put together a complete 6-week arm training program called Ultimate Arms. But guess what? You guys know we train athletes here. We don't just do arms and nothing else. There's plenty of leg training, shoulders, back, chest, everything you're supposed to hit, we hit in that program. But I designed it so that we can preferentially make sure that you're going to add size to your arms in just 6 weeks. That program is available over at athletenext.com. In the meantime, if you found this video helpful, leave your comments and thumbs up below and let me know. I know you like the muscle marker. If you want me to break it out in other ways, just let me know below and I'll do my best to cover it. All right? So I'll be back here again in just a few days.